This is my research project assignment 3. It's going to be a review of my work booklet, and I'll be talking about the aims and objectives, then talking about the strengths and weaknesses of the project and future recommendations which can help improve it. So firstly, I had 5 objectives, which you can see on the screen here, and I had to complete, and I did achieve all of these, and I'll show examples of where you can find them in my work booklet. So my first aim was to find definitions of the performance criteria, which were shooting, a rule breaking, so shooting was the first definition, a rule breaking in hockey, which I decided was going to be feet, this is inside and outside of the D, and lastly it was the work rate of the player in the England team. As you can see, I found 3 definitions which are suitable for each factor I was analysing, and I found them on Google and or in a book chapter. My second aim was to design a way to be able to analyse the 2 performances, therefore using a software called Dartfish. And the picture here on my slide shows the buttons and keys I made to be able to code the 2 games. It has buttons for 3 different factors I was analysing, and it goes into different types of shooting, such as what areas they can shoot from, and whether it was successful or unsuccessful, or what type of shooting it was. I have all the players from both games and which comes on and off the pitch. And lastly, whenever something happens such as feet or shooting, I need to put what period it happened in or quarter. Moving on to the next aim. So looking through these graphs I'll show in a minute, there are 2 different sets of them for 2 different performances. This helped me later in my project to compare the performances. As you can see, I achieved this by using the form of graphs and pie charts. Pie charts cannot be compared. The graphs and pie charts cannot be compared, but I did the same for the same graphs on both performances. So example, I used the data from the first video to make a graph about the types of hit and the amount they did. I did the same for the second video, but with the data I found on this video. This helped me to see which game the England team performed better in overall, and looked at what the strengths and weaknesses were in both games. I will now show you the graphs and charts. So you can find this under results and then charts. As you can see, they all have a little subheading next to them telling you what they have in them, and then I have sprinting, jogging and walking for the work rate. They're also labelled such as 2A and 2B, and they continue on like so. Moving on to the next. Aim 5 and aim 4 can be spoken about together as they were achieved together, because they can be backed up by the same piece of evidence. They will be found in my discussion part of the booklet. I achieved this by going into some depth about the 2 performances, stating the similarities and differences of their performance in the different games, by relating back to the charts which was shown just before then. With the weaknesses, which were found by looking on the charts again, I was able to then talk about future recommendations on how they can improve, and I was able to give them ways to do so. For example, using fartlek training to improve their cardio, because it relates to the movements of the game, like not doing much sprinting, majority of jogging. And also there was drills in there improving their formation. I linked into my literal review and said that my research, which I found, didn't support the statement which I found about work rate in hockey. So this will be found under here, and it's stated discussion. All of this here, and it goes further on down. So moving on to the next is my strengths. So my knowledge of hockey was a big help when watching the games and writing about them. This is one of the reasons why I chose to do hockey. It made watching the games more enjoyable because I played hockey and it's one of my favourite sports. This allowed me to stay focused on the game, therefore it would help me increase the reliability of the data due to me watching the game constantly, allowing me to pick up on the different factors which I was analysing. Knowing the rules and regulations helped me to follow the game. When there was a feat inside of the D, I would know if it was either going to be a shootout, a hit out, or a short corner, depending on whose foot it did touch. This will allow me to know that there has been a foul, a foot as such, occurred, because these are the outcomes of it. If I could see properly, I would be able to press the foul button on the tagging window. Knowing hockey allowed me to understand what I had to write about in the discussion, for example, giving the team's future recommendations on how to improve their formation. I could give them drills, which I already have used when I've been training with my team and for formation. Second strength was good structure. The way I presented my project, which was on Word, will allow another person who would read it find it easier to find things such as like the results section. This is because I use subheadings, and these are also in bold. This allowed whoever was looking through my project to be able to find the sections they need quickly. I also had a context page, which is correct and will help people find their way through my many pages of the project, because they will need to know which page, because they will know which page to go to straight away, rather than flicking through. This will also help me get to the correct places quicker, saving me time to look through a lot of pages. Lastly, my last strength was time management. My time management was good. This can be said because I was able to hand in my project on time due to the deadline dates. I didn't set any mini deadlines for myself. But I knew when I was in college, I needed to make most of my time using Dartfish, because we weren't able to use the software on our own devices due to payment on using it. This meant doing the coding had to be all done in college time, which limited the time to complete the project. There were some ways of using it on our own device would allow us to have more time to finish it if we wished. It wasn't so bad because we were able to do the written anywhere we wished, such as college or at home, because this was done on Word, allowing it to be transferred to different computers by a memory stick. Therefore, in my own time, I was able to do increase the amount of work I have done, which allowed me to turn in my project on time. So moving on to the weaknesses, errors made, which was an error which was made when we were starting to learn about using Dartfish. I didn't know how to use the work rate button. I understood it for shorts and rule breaking because you only had to press the button. Due to work rate being continuous buttons, they had to stay on what movement she was doing, such as walking, until she changed to sprinting. At first I wasn't doing this correctly, therefore I found out how to do it correctly and I had to start again. So I did correct my problem, but I got pushed back slightly on time because of this. There were still errors made in work rate. Sometimes I lost focus because it was hard watching a screen for such a long period of time, so I did get a little bit bored. Due to the lack of focus, I could have missed when my player changed speed, causing the timings to be wrong. If another person were to use my research, it would be unreliable because the data which I collected would be incorrect. Secondly, it would be the software. The software, as I said, we used was Dartfish. The way it was laid out was very hard to see the video due to having the tagging control and the key buttons having majority of the space on the screen. This took up some space, and there are other things such as like the file you had to look through to find the video also took up some space. This meant it was hard to see the player on the pitch, so when something happened like a shot, it was hard to place who it was, as well as the camera angles weren't the best, so I had to rewatch part of their performance many times to see who it was. Due to watching it so many times, it took up a lot of time. We had a deadline for the project, so I had to keep to a tight schedule. So I couldn't stay on for it too long because it could have taken up too much time. So sometimes I had to guess by looking at what the player was, and just have an educated guess to see like if it was if the majority of the time forwards normally score, so I had to look at the lineup at the very start to see who the forwards were. Lastly, I had no audio on the video, and the other and if I did, it would be out of time. On the other video it was. Therefore I couldn't hear the commentator speaking to see who scored, and I couldn't hear their names. Most of the time I could roughly make out the player, but if not, I had to make a guess. This caused my work to be unreliable. Lastly, looking at only one performance criteria. Overall, the performance criteria I looked at was shooting. All I got from this was how their shooting skills were. This can't tell me anything else, therefore can't really talk about how good or bad the team's performance was overall in the games, because I didn't have any factors to weigh in, such as how their passing or tackling was. If I were to do passing and tackling as well, it would increase the data which I could collect, and I could back up statements which I talk about their performance, and my discussion would be better justified. The negatives about doing more than one performance criteria, it will be harder to keep track on what the team are doing, therefore missing out on skills, causing the results to be incorrect. I could watch the games for each performance criteria as well as the work rate, but this would become tedious watching the same thing so many times, and it will consume too much time which I didn't have enough of. So there's things I would keep the same or change. Overall, I think my project went pretty well. In terms of what I could change or keep the same, I would want to keep the same sports, so hockey. It allowed me to put my knowledge of hockey to use in the project and made me learn new things and learn new things for the sports. However, it would be nice to change the sports and give myself a challenge. But the problem with this is I would need to do more research to understand rules and regulations of the sports, and this could be more time consuming. And coming to discussion, it would be harder to write a lengthening paragraph about this performance because I wouldn't know much about the sports. Secondly, using Dartfish was a good piece of software to help coding, but it would be better if we could have another software where the students can access it on their own computers or laptops at home. It will help them have more time to do the coding. But if this can't happen, then sticking with Dartfish will be the best, because after using it once, we are familiar with it and will help speed up the project because we wouldn't have to have any sessions on how to use Dartfish. Lastly, the future recommendations. So, in the future, if I were to do another project on any type of sports, I would like to analyse the teams in more than two games, against different oppositions. This will allow me to see if the teams will use different techniques and skills against different oppositions, giving a higher chance of winning if these skills were carried out correctly. It will give me more data, allowing me to have a further understanding of where their strengths and weaknesses are in the team. Also, looking at different performance can show me if they change formations against certain oppositions, or if they move a player in a different position. I could then compare to see where she is better. Overall, doing this will help improve my discussion and have a larger amount of data and research to back up my opinions on the team's performance. Using more than one performance criteria, increasing the amount of performance criteria will help increase the data, but also show me if the team's other skills are good or bad. If I were to do this in a hockey game, I could add in passing and tackling, which will show me will allow me to compare the different performance criteria and see which one is better. I would then be able to give them more future recommendations to how to improve this. Lastly, using gender, watching the same team but different genders, such as men England and women's England hockey, will allow me to talk about their similarities and differences. I could see there was a significant difference in the performance, in their performances, but by using the same performance criteria and looking at their tactics and skills. Using the same performance criteria will make it easy to compare the results in the end. Thank you very much for listening.